What's up, guys? Welcome back to my Drone Camps channel. I'm pretty excited today because I get to do an updated 2019 review of the Walkera V450 D03 helicopter on the channel. Another heli. I love flying these things. Was originally a heli guy before I was a drone guy, so don't coin me as a drone guy totally, because I've been flying RC my whole life. Airplanes first, helis next, and then quadcopters for like the last 10 years. But I also kind of hop back and forth between helis and quads because they're sort of very related. But I'm going to update this review. This heli has been around for years and years now, and I got to talk about the good characteristics of it. We're also going to talk about the cons that might come along with this heli. And today we're also going to give away this iFlight Cinnabee that I've promised I'd give away in the first week of May. This was our April giveaway for 2019, so I'm super excited. This is a little tiny whoop with HD on board, and it has a Cat X turtle as well. Brand new lens on the front, all ready to go for somebody, and that somebody is going to be, and I'll put his name down here in the bottom left hand corner of the screen. Congratulations, David Sanchez. I'm going to be sending you the iFlight Cinnabee, and we're going to send some other goodies to you as well, because I owe you some goodies from the Drone Camps channel. So I appreciate your support on Patreon, bro. I really do. Keep the channel going. That really helps a lot. So anybody that wants to be a Patreon can hop into our monthly drawings. And by the way, be sure you stay locked into your Patreon at the first week. Don't drop out the first week, because you might not get yourself in the giveaway. And super excited for the May giveaway. This is the May giveaway. Check this out, you guys. This is an Emax Buzz, brand new. It has the retail box that comes along with it. It already has an XM Plus receiver in here, all ready to go for you to bind up to your radio. Set up your switches inside Betaflight and start ripping with this. It even still has the lens cover on the front here, the sticker that goes over the lens to protect it. Still has the bottom plates covered up down here. And you can top mount or bottom mount a battery. I prefer to top mount, put my GoPro here. And it also comes with this retail box and everything that comes along with the retail box for the Buzz. This is about like a $300 value, so this is a really cool giveaway for May. Please do click on that link down below that says "Be My Friend" and jump into this drawing. This is going to be awesome. So without further ado, guys, let's go outside. Let's do some heli flying today, and let me show you the V450 D03. I am not really a huge stick banger, like a crazy 3D heli pilot. You're going to see like more of what the average guy can fly this heli like right out of the box. And I have to say, this is a great beginner heli. This one flew better than the last heli that I had on the channel a couple weeks ago. I really like that other one, but this one flies even better. This gyro is really locked in, doesn't have any tail wag in the punch outs, and it's really smooth, very predictable. So I felt really comfortable flying this one, going inverted and practicing my flips and all that. So let's go outside on a beautiful day today and let's fly this V450. Let me show you what it's all about. We'll come back into the studio, onto the bench, and I'll show you this heli, the design, a little bit closer up. We'll talk about the pros and cons. Alright, so I have my battery all charged up, and I'm going to go ahead and check out my orientations just to make sure the swash is moving the right direction. My throttle hold is working. Everything looks good there. So I gotta tell you, one good thing that's awesome about this heli is the spool up. They have the throttle curve set up correctly. If you have it set up incorrectly, it will be to kind of really just all of a sudden really brief, and it'll come to a really high head speed when you go to just throttle up. And a lot of times what that does is kicks the tail around and makes you fall over on the ground. If you have a nice slow gentle curve in your throttle curve, when you're bringing up the throttle to bring your blades up to speed, don't give it any positive collective before you start to lift off, before the head speed comes up. So beginners, let the head speed come up nice and strong before you go positive pitch and try to lift the heli off the ground. That's gonna make your launch a lot better. So when you're first learning how to fly a heli, just keep the tail in towards you and make the heli go left and right, keeping that tail towards you all the time. Once you get used to that, you can throw that rudder around a little bit like I did just then, and come back to tail towards you. Super important as far as your orientation go. And I guess the holy grail of heli flying is learning how to fly nose in hover. I know some guys that they're really good at 3D stick banging that can barely do a nose in hover. So it's important to be able to nose in hover before you really get started in a lot of forward flight. It's going to make you a much better 3D pilot in the end. So I got to say a shout out to Mr. Joe and Doug Jefferson for teaching me a lot of that sort of beginner stuff. Doug, also a good friend of mine, taught me how to work on Helis from top to bottom. Taught me pretty much everything I know. So I think that this V450 is way better tuned. You can see here it just really holds a really solid hover, and I can just really hold it in one position really easily. And I haven't flown a heli in a few years, so you're seeing kind of rusty thumbs here with my flying. But when I move the sticks, the greatest thing about this heli, especially for you new guys, is that when I move the sticks left and right, I'm going to drive that tail backwards for a second there, having a little bit of fun with this heli. But when I move the sticks around, it's not super nimble, which will kind of, you know, spiral you to the ground really quick and have a crash. Some of the other more advanced helis out there, they just are way more nimble from the beginning. So this one is really docile, and now I'm going to try to put the heli in idle up 1. So we're in idle up mode. That means that I have 100% power in the blades right now, no matter whether I go upside down or not. Don't try to go upside down if you're not in idle up. You will crash to the ground because when you push stick down, your throttle will decrease, you know, obviously. So when you push stick down, when you have idle up, you still have full motor speed, and you get a positive collective when you're inverted, which will push the heli up. So I'm just testing out this little this pitch setup here, testing out some little pitch bumps here. Feels really good, actually. It's really loose in the middle, in the very middle of the throttle stick. So I get a lot of reaction from the heli. Now I'm just trying those TikToks. I haven't tried those this year yet. This is my first try for the TikToks. And one of the reasons I tried the TikToks is because I felt so comfortable flying this heli. This is the kind of heli I feel like I can sort of get back to where I was a few years ago flying helis. I feel like I could level myself back up. I used to be a pretty good sport pilot, you know, working on my funnels and hurricanes and inverted grass cutting down to the grass level. And that'll be something you practice way later when you start to fly inverted. Do it up nice and high like this, and just swing your heli back around. And then you work on, you know, getting your heli lower to the ground. Everybody in the pits and the peanut gallery back east used to always, you know, yell at you, lower, lower, you know, push you to fly just a little better, or crash, one of the two. But very predictable heli. It's really fun to fly. And what I think is super cool is that you have a 3S2200 on board. You don't need a super high rated C-rated expensive battery on here. You can fly a 25C battery on this. Like those old E-flights are just fine. I'll also put some links down below for some 3S2200s that are better priced. Touching those pitch bumps again. So you don't, it's not like a race quad where you need a super high C-rated battery to be able to handle all the amps. So you're not drawing a ton of amps, and I'm getting like an 8-minute flight time with this 3S2200, even though this 3S2200 I'm flying is like probably like 5 years old. So this is a pretty old battery I have on here. I didn't even fly the brand new battery that came with it. The 2600 would definitely get you like 10 minutes out of this heli. Again, I'm kind of practicing my flips and come back around, come back in tail end. Sometimes I'll come back to sort of my home area. Tail end lets me keep my orientation straight. You'll notice me driving that tail backwards toward myself sometimes. But I love the way that this heli sounds in the air. It sounds like a larger, like 500 size heli when it goes up and around like this. It has a really nice sound to these blades. And I'll try to find you guys some cheaper blades. I think the V450 blades are around $30 for a set of the carbon blades. Make sure that you buy the carbon blades and not the glass fiber blades. Glass fiber is a little bit cheaper, but the carbon is definitely going to be more durable for you. You're not going to notice a whole lot of difference in the way they look, but I always prefer carbon blades. And you don't really have to buy name brand ones, by the way, guys. You can fly just as good with some of the other Chinese type of blades. If you're intermediate to expert, you know, you might rely on those name brand blades to not break on you because you're doing some crazy stuff. But for average flying like we're doing here, they're just fine. And I'm impressed with the performance of this heli. I love how smooth it is. The gyro is like really spot on. I'm like 95% happy with this gyro as compared to something more expensive like the Beast X or some of the Spectrum gyro setups. So I'm probably going to go ahead and land. I'm getting toward the end of my battery now, so I'm just going to auto rotate. That means I'm going to kill the throttle switch here, and it's always good to get out of idle up before you come into auto rotate and bring your head speed way down. I forgot to do that on this one, and I landed kind of hard here, so keep that in mind when you go to auto rotate to the ground. I always do auto rotate to land because it just puts a lot less stress in the head. So I think I might spool back up and try that again, and again I forgot to do the same thing here again, as get out of idle up. So flip your idle up switch when you go to get out, or you'll have kind of a hard landing like that. But the good news is that I did this on the other heli and I actually kind of broke a link. So this one held up in some of my hard sort of auto rotation landings, and I didn't break anything on here at all, even with a couple hard slam downs. But definitely a cool heli. I love the way it looks, and everything is fairly cheap, and a lot of the parts are still available online for this heli, which is awesome. I think the average price for the parts on this heli are somewhere between $4, $5, and $6 on Banggood. So I'm going to try to get you guys some links down below for the main parts that you would need for this heli that you might have to order, like the main shaft, blades, landing gear. Those are usually the three main things you need. Also, we'll put a link to the canopy and some tail blades for you that I would recommend. So let's go ahead back now into the studio and let's check out the V450 D03 on the bench. Here we go. All right, guys, welcome back from the flight test. What did you think about that? I think this heli sounds really cool in the air. I love the way the blades push around the air, and it makes that what we used to call blade fart in the air. When you come back way back over from a big maneuver, you do these big loops with it. It just makes this really cool buzzing sound, like all the way around. And one of the things I love the best about helis. But let's talk about the way you can run this heli. This is a 40 amp ESC on here, and we do have a digital tail servo. It is actually a Walkera high-speed digital servo running your rudder on the very back of the heli. Most helis, if you're not familiar with them, a lot of them do use digital tail servos. They're a little more expensive than the ones you have to have in the head. Also, those top blades are 325 millimeter. They're not 450 millimeter, by the way. 450 is the size of this heli. So it does have a really cool looking canopy on here. It's also supporting a 6-axis gyro system in the back here. Let me just pop this canopy off. This canopy goes on with 2 rubber grommets. Just slide that forward, and you can see I'm flying a fairly low C-rated 3S 2200 milliamp on the front right here, and the tray doesn't extend all the way down. It looks like the battery might have slid down just a little bit. You can push that battery all the way up to about here and then lock it down. You don't want it to touch this motor right here because this motor does spin, and years past I've had these batteries kind of bump into the motor and cause almost a short out on my heli. So be careful of that, because you can definitely get a fire going. But look at this frame from the side. I think the coolest thing about this heli is that, well, as far as beginners goes, the parts are going to be cheaper on this one. All of the servos are recessed inside the body, which is neat. Sometimes they stick out the side right here, which can kind of leave them more exposed for damage. The actual main gear right here did really well. It hit the ground a couple times and did not strip. Another thing that held up really well, and it's a great design, is the fact that these servos that are controlling your aileron and rudder and pitch, or actually the servos were controlling your elevator and your ailerons, basically the rudders on the tail. They have shorter arms on these servos, and they're beefier than the ones on the last heli that I reviewed. And why is that good? Well, it's good because when I hit the ground with this heli, I didn't have any problems breaking those servo arms. Something in this head has to break when you do hit the ground. Sometimes if you hit the ground too hard, you'll break these arms and the linkage up in here. Also, not everything is metal in this head, which can be a good and a bad thing. It's gonna be a little easier to break this head in a nice crash, but the good thing is that the parts are gonna be way cheaper. And if you bend a metal part, of course, there's no bending it back. It does have a metal swash plate, which is nice. It does have a metal center plate for the head here, and it does have plastic blade grips, which are totally fine. One thing you do need to keep an eye on as far as beginners, if you're a beginner getting into setting up a heli for the first time, I always tell people to go through this entire heli with a driver and just check out all the bolts on your frame and the tail, because before you take off and do your first hover, you have to remember there's a lot of RPM on these helis, and things can vibrate loose from the factory, just like one of your race quads. Whenever you get something from China, it's put together in a factory somewhere, but their QC is actually a lot better than some of the quads. So everything was tight on here already, for the exception of one blade grip bolt right here. There's a little lock nut on the bottom right here. You'll just have to put a little larger, I believe it was an M4 driver, on this top bolt right here. And the way that you tighten up your blades is you want to have, when you open these blades up and you tilt the heli to the side, and I believe this one loosened up a little bit on me, and you have to just frequently touch them with your hand and twist them like this to see that they're nice and tight. They should fall, like this one is actually pretty good, so that when you tilt the heli to the side, it should fall towards you, okay? It shouldn't be super tight in the blade grip, otherwise you're going to get slop and you're going to get some vibes when you do spool up. I've also been told that these bearings can wear out over time. Obviously they can cause a crash if they seize up. So your head block bearings, check those out every once in a while. If you notice some vibration when you spool up your heli, you will notice that sort of shaking. There might be a little violent shaking, and a lot of times that's due to having some type of head block being blown out or getting ready to completely blow out on you. Also could be a bent shaft. Maybe you tipped it over. One other thing to look out for. Other ways you can get vibration is actually having a little bit of slop in the tail, and sometimes that can be caused by too much gyro gain here. So you can turn down your gyro, make it less sensitive, that way you'll have a little less vibration. It's trying to overcorrect basically. And the other bit of vibes comes from having a little bit of slack in the belt that goes to the tail. So this is a belt drive tail on here, and if you touch your finger to it on the side here, it should feel fairly tight inside there. I don't know if we can really get to this belt. Some of the heli designs let you stick your finger in and be able to touch the belt and feel the tension, and that way you know that your belt's nice and tight. You can loosen these 3 screws right here, and you can physically pull the tail out by hand toward the rear and tighten that belt up. You don't want it too tight and you don't want it too loose. So it's kind of a fine line between having the right tension on that belt while you're flying to reduce vibration. Now I'm also kind of happy that this came with the Devo 7, the DaVinci Devo 7. I've seen this radio around for years. It's running on 2.4. And when I'm flying with this full-size transmitter, this is actually bigger than the Align T-Rex ready to fly transmitter that comes along with the 150, and I believe the 370 or the 450L that they include in their ready to fly. I think this is a little bit better transmitter than that. The T-Rex one feels kind of chintzy and small and toy-like in my hands, but this one's nice because it does have a computer interface. It accepts a 2S battery. It has throttle hold already set up right here, which is very, very nice. And we have 1 layer of idle up on here. Sometimes they have 2. The other heli that I reviewed had 2, but this was only a 2-position switch here that they have idle up on, so they only actually have one version of idle up. So what that means is you can set various levels of idle up on your heli, where you can have 80% throttle on the first position for idle up when you switch into it. The next one you can have 100% throttle. So being able to get 100% throttle allows you to do 3D, and that means 100% throttle whichever direction your throttle stick is facing, up or down. So if you go into crash and idle up, man, you really destroy some stuff. So be careful with that. But the cool thing about this one is that the parts are cheap, still available. So be careful, be ready to flick that throttle hold position switch if you think you're going in. Just kill the motor. That way it releases a lot of the motor tension off of the drive system here in the shaft, and for your head, you probably have a lot less damage. I've seen guys go in full idle up and just destroy helis, because that motor is going to continue to try to keep those blades going, and it does what we call the dead cockroach, upside down, beating itself to pieces on the ground. So yeah, helis, when they go into crash, sometimes you get a really big crash out of them. But let's look at this motor here. Let's zoom into the motor, and let me show you that motor up close. This is a really nice brushless motor, 2510, and we have 3500 kV on there. And I'll just zoom in even a little bit closer with my camera, and you can see those coils inside that motor are pretty thick. They're actually nicely coiled inside the stator there, so not a cheap motor. Really nice motor, and it's shrouded all the way around by that plastic frame. And don't be super, disenchanted by a plastic frame, because it really does give a lot, and might even be more durable than your carbon frame. If you're running something like 1.5 millimeter side plates, this stuff is super, super dense. It feels really, really dense. It would take a lot to actually, I don't think you're going to break this frame, honestly. The first thing that usually breaks in a hard crash is going to be your landing gear, and I think the landing gear are like $6. So let's go ahead and plug this guy in real quick. Let me show you the way your head should move. And just want to make sure our switches are facing all the way around. One mistake you don't want to make is plugging this heli in with idle up on, because I've had guys before fly up, and always kind of put your hand up here on top of it and hold it with your hand. I've had them spool up in my hand before. They've also spooled up, and my buddies flew up and hit a ceiling in his kitchen. Okay, so now it's an idle throttle hold. So even if I hit idle up right now on accident, it's not going to do anything. So now we can test to see how level our blades are, and this is the way you do that. You're going to turn on your heli, and you're going to hit throttle hold first, like I have here. Let me just bring the camera up here, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring the throttle stick up to about half stick. So right about half stick, you should see that your blades are level. If they're not level at half stick, you're gonna have some issues. So you'll need to get a pitch gauge, and you can get a pitch gauge now for about 10 bucks. You can get a digital one, or you can get an old school one that doesn't use a battery. And those are about 6 bucks, I believe. But that looks fairly level, and this is actually way more level than the other heli that I had. Was just a little bit off. When I went into idle up, I almost had to like keep my throttle stick all the way in the down position to actually make the heli stay up. So I was really a little bit nervous to do 3D on my first flight. But this one is completely balanced out perfectly. And one thing you want to check for is slop in the head. Move these around a little bit and see if you feel a whole lot of parts moving in here. You want to make sure that things are nice and tight there, and there's not a lot of slop. Another way you can check for slop is turn the heli on its side here, and we're going to pull on the main shaft up and down. Just move it up and down, and actually it's perfect. I don't feel any slop in this. That's awesome. And slop would be just this bolt down here moving up and down. You can also tighten up this. You can pull it up and tighten up this collar right here. This collar right here riding on this bearing should be nice and tight. It shouldn't be too tight, of course, but it should ride right on top of that bearing. And you can see it sitting there on that bearing. I went out of focus there. Come back just a little bit. But you can see That is a very important piece of this heli. So now we're going to zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to show you the swash plate and the way the sticks work. So we're going to use the left stick. We're going to go from mid stick all the way up here and all the way down. You can see it's almost resting on that collar down below. That's changing the pitch of the blades when I do that, and that's what I was talking about before for leveling your blades. If both of your blades are exactly right, this head will be totally balanced out in 90 degrees. You're going to use a swash plate leveler to balance out your head. This is after you have a crash. If you have to rebuild this head, this is what you'd have to do. But the nice thing is that this heli came, which is a huge pro, with the blades level at half stick. So half stick right there if I'm idle up. If I'm upside down, see there would be negative pitch. And if I'm upside down, negative pitch will become positive pitch, right? And pushing up, they always said down is good if you're inverted and you're learning inverted, and up is expensive because that's going to drive you right into the ground when you're inverted and idle up. So now we're going to check out the positive pitch, and I would need a pitch gauge to be able to tell how much degrees of pitch from the center I have on both blades. And you're going to test one blade at a time. So you'll put the pitch gauge on this side, measure it, and put it on this side and measure it. And if you have a totally balanced head here, you should get some, and this is these two links right there that you're going to either twist up or down. You pop these off with ball link pliers, and then you twist them with your fingers up or down, and that will lengthen or shorten them. So very excited that the head is nice and level. Look at that half stick right here. Look how level that looks. Right about there is half stick. That's awesome. Now the next thing I'll show you is your pitch forward. We call it pitch in quadcopters, but in helis we actually call it elevator. So we're going to check out the elevator servo, and if you push forward on the right stick, you should see that swash plate go forward like this. It should tilt forward, okay? And the back arm on that guide should come up. So that looks right, and it should go back to level when you go back to mid stick. Now if I pull back on that right stick, it should go down just like that. So that's the elevator on the heli. And then if we go left like that, you should see that the swash plate tilts left and right, just like that. So our swash plate looks good. If you go around in a circle, you'll get something like that. And notice it also moves the blades. So you're changing a little bit of an angle of the blades when you do pitch. You can see both of them move at the same time up top. When I do pitch forward, notice that the blades move down, and that will bring the heli down. Pulling back on the stick, elevator back should bring the heli up, changes your pitch on the heli. And that's how that works, and I'll show you the tail. And honestly, this is a nice little overview for beginners, giving you kind of a heads up on your orientations on your helicopter, because one of the biggest things that I didn't quite understand when I first started to repair things are the basics. And when you don't understand the basics of how a heli operates, that can be challenging for you to repair it because you don't know which way blades rotate, which way they go on the head. One thing one of the old timers taught me first was the fact that the blades always go on clockwise. So the leading edge of your main blades should go leading edge facing toward the clockwise rotation. And this next blade over, same thing. So if you don't have that correct, your heli will actually fly into the ground when you try to take off. Very similar to a multi-rotor if you have your blades on backwards. And when the main head turns, these two tail blades should rotate away from the body, rotating in this direction. So we have clockwise here, and we have counterclockwise on the tail. See that? Okay, and both of those blades' leading edges are facing the counterclockwise direction. And also check out your rudder. Okay, if I push left, that top blade should move to the right back here. If I push the stick to the right, the bottom blade should go to the left. Okay, and then the top blade should go to the left. You see that? Left, right, left, right. And another way to check it out is which way this direction goes here. If I push left on the stick, you notice it goes right here, the slider. And I push right here, it goes to the left. If I push right, it goes left, in conjunction with the main leading edge of the blade. Now, one other thing you want to look out for, and I just noticed this, one of those blades was just a little bit loose, and if you lift that blade up, if you see it moves in the grip just like that, if it moves up and down like that, that means it needs to be tightened just a little bit more, because there's a little bit of slop between this bottom of this blade grip and the top. So it's moving, kind of rocking back and forth. And this type of thing can cause some vibes. So now you guys have a little closer view of the gyro and receiver on board. This is the DeVinton RX270 3H-D gyro. And it's nice. There is quite a few different pot adjustments on here that you can do. You have this one here, which is going to be your elevator. You have your elevator and aileron here as well. Your gain here, and you have your rudder right here over on the far side. You also have your elevator servo lead up here, and you have your aileron here and your pitch right here. So third one down is going to be your pitch servo, which is your elevator servo is back here, and your two ailerons are up in the front right here. And lastly, we have where the ESC is plugged in into the throttle port right there. And one quick tip that I can give you about plugging in your battery, you want your battery lead facing back this direction. I also soldered on an XT60 because most of the connectors I have are XT60s. You just want to bring this battery lead under like this. Make sure your throttle is in the down position all the way down, all the way down. You don't want even the slightest bit of throttle in when you plug it in. So bring this underneath this post right here. This is going to keep your actual battery lead out of your main gear right here. So that's very important. Once you plug your Heli in, a good habit is just always go ahead and hit throttle hold here, and that way you can't spool up on accident and fly into yourself or somebody else. So now you're looking at everything that comes in the box with the Walkera V450 D03. I think it's a pretty good selection of accessories that come along with it. It's like one of those boxes that you can just get in the mail, and you can charge up the batteries for your radio. You can use AA's actually as well. It has a little JST connector right here that you can plug into the back of the radio, or you can take it out and you can put your own 2S LiPo in there like I did, and it plugs into the side. It also has a receiver harness for your JST on the inside of the radio, so there's no way you can get reverse polarization happening and short out your radio. So that's a really nice thing. You also have a really good range on this. You can probably fly this Heli further away than you could actually see it to fly it. It does have a really long antenna coming off the receiver and gyro back there, coming back to your D7, so a great range on there. You also get a battery along with it, which has that sort of red battery connector. I forgot what these are called, but I prefer the XT30 versus these. These are more of old school ones. These are easier to solder up probably, but I'm not a big fan of these, so I snipped these off and I used the XT60. But this is a 3S 2600 battery, and you can also fly, if you can't find a 2600 out there, you can fly the 3S 2200, and I was getting like 8 minutes flight time out of a 2200, so I think you could probably get 10 minutes out of this battery, which is great. And the charger they give you in the box also charges 2 and 3S batteries. You can see the balance lead port right there. You're just going to plug in this white part of the battery right here, and it'll charge up probably less than a couple hours time. You get an extra computer cable here. You get 3 different Allen wrenches, some other accessories. You do get some hardware. You get a bind plug in case you have to bind up another receiver or gyro. And actually you can still get this gyro, which is great. It's still online available to get if you had to replace that, put a new one on there. And you get a pot adjustment. Looks like a little mini screwdriver thing, and that's what this little guy's for. Stick it inside the holes there, and you can adjust those pots on all axes. And also, since this one is quite a few years old, they give you CDs for the user manuals, which is kind of hilarious. You have a CD drive, you can load up these PDFs. One is for the Heli, and this one is for your Devo 7. So as far as the beginners are concerned, I think this is kind of an easy, foolproof way to get into helis. It flies great. It's really locked in. It's not super, super nimble right out of the box. So it does have more beginner tune on this heli. You can tune it later to be more aggressive and fly more like a T-Rex heli. There's another guy, my guy Ali out there. Search for his channel and watch his video on the V450. He is a stick banger, and he flies this probably this heli to the almost its max potential, really doing a lot of hardcore stick banging 3D type stuff. So if you want to see the full limits of this heli, go ahead and watch his video. He really pushes it to the edge, and I'm not surprised he blew bearings out, because he's probably flying it way more aggressive than any of you guys are going to fly this heli, honestly. So I think this is what it's geared toward, guys who are beginners but also moving into the intermediate direction, where you're going to do what we call sport flying. And sport flying is like mild 3D, learning your tic-tocs, learning your inverted flying, your funnels. Possibly it will do funnels, tic-tocs, it'll do all kinds of, it'll do aileron tic-tocs, you can do nose in tic-tocs with this thing. It will do just about anything you throw at it, like beginner to pro. So I think it's a capable heli. And just like any other heli, when you first get into helis, just keep an eye on your bolts and try to maintain that things are nice and tight all the way around, that things aren't loosening up. Go over your head every few days that you fly this. If you don't have to do it every time you go out and fly it, but every few days it's good to go back and check out the links on your head. Just put your hands on everything in here to make sure that these ball links feel tight and that all the bolts in the head are tight, and especially this bolt at the very top. It's the Jesus bolt, and also these two bolts holding the blade on the blade grips. Very super important. Jesus bolt is right here on the top of this top stem right here, and that's what holds your entire top head assembly on. So a very important bolt. But I think as far as a star rating goes, I've got a 4.9 on this kit. I think it's really great. Plug and play. Comes with a charger, battery, and everything you need to start flying helis. So I think this is an old school, ready to fly, and it's still relevant today. So really locked in feeling gyro, and no slop in the tail, and no vibration on punch out. So notorious thing about helis sometimes is when you punch out with the throttle, the tail slips and it starts doing this on the way up. So very jittery feeling when you have a gyro that has too much gain in it. And this one flies way better than the previous one I had on the channel, so I'm stoked about that. So 2 thumbs up from Drone Camp's channel for Walkera's V450 DO3. I think it's awesome. So anyway, you guys are safe to get this one. I'm glad I chose a good one to review for you guys. So take care, guys. Happy flying, and congratulations again to David for winning the awesome Cinnabi. I really appreciate you guys watching the channel and subscribing. All kinds of new heli videos and quad videos coming up on the channel for summertime. It's going to get super busy, and it's really nice and sunny outside to go fly. So enjoy your day and your weekend. I'm Justin Davis, guys. I'll see you on the next one.